Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report. Mitchell Renz here from Chat Sports. And coming up on today's show, we're going to go through the Raiders Round 1 draft grades. Obviously around Tyree Wilson, who the Silver and Black selected at number 7 overall. But on top of that, the draft grade is going to be based on what also went down on day 1. Because there were some winners, and then there were some clear losers in my book. When you look at the first 4 picks, you had 3 quarterbacks go off the board. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson. To me, one of the big clear winners is Houston. Why? They went out, they got their guys. They got a Will Anderson Jr., they got C.J. Stroud. That is a huge, huge win for them in my book. Then you go from picks 5 through 8. I was really heartbroken when Devin Witherspoon went off the board at number 5. Obviously, he was one of the top cornerbacks, if not the top cornerback on the board. Paris Johnson Jr. goes off the board at 6, which I liked because I was nervous that the Silver and Black were to take him. Bijan Robinson, great player, not a top 10 running back in my book in terms of willing to take a running back there for Atlanta. But then Tyree Wilson, which is going to be the pick that a lot of y'all obviously are tuning in for. I'll give you my grade here in just a second. Jalen Carter goes off the board at number 9 to Philadelphia. Darnell Wright, one of the top offensive tackles. Peter Skoronski building that offensive line. Jahmyr Gibbs, this was probably the first big-time reach that I saw in the 2023 NFL Draft Round 1. Good running back, explosive. But why take him at 12? Didn't make a lot of sense to me. Lucas Van Ness goes off the board at 13. Broderick Jones, a player that Chugs flat out called during our live show and said, hey, Steelers love this guy. Then they went up and they took him. Will McDonald, Emmanuel Forbes was another, and I would say this. There are bad organizations that stay bad for a reason. I'd say the biggest reach in round 1, there it is, Emmanuel Forbes at pick 16. Because you have Emmanuel Forbes or you can have Chris Gonzalez. Give me Chris Gonzalez every day of the week. Unfortunately, New England got him. Jack Campbell, I love him as a linebacker. Not going to take him in round 1. Detroit, 2 big-time reaches for them. For that reason, with the trade backs for what they did, they might be the biggest losers in round 1. Kalijah Kancey, great defensive tackle at 19. Jackson Smith-Njigba, he goes to the Seattle Seahawks at pick 20. Quentin Johnson, if they want to be able to find they might not admit it, this is a Mike Williams replacement. You get another big-time athletic receiver who hopefully can stay healthy. That's your replacement. Zay Flowers goes to Baltimore for Lamar Jackson. Jordan Addison goes off the board for another receiver there for probably a Adam Thielen replacement. Deonta Banks, round 1, pick 24. Like him a lot as a corner. The Giants traded up for him. Dalton Kincaid, he goes off the board at 25. The only tight end taken in round 1. Buffalo, they wanted to be able to add another receiver option slash, when I say receiver, I mean receiving option, tight end wide receiver for Josh Allen. Mozzie Smith to the Cowboys. Anton Harrison, Miles Murphy, and then to round out round 1, Brian Bresee, Nolan Smith, Felix Anudike Uzama. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're going to be on the clock here at 32. My question to all of you is this. Which team won round 1 of the 2023 NFL Draft? When you look at all the teams out there, all their picks, which team do you think is going to be the biggest winner? It's going to be the pinned comment on today's show. After the YouTube ad break, I'm going to give you my answer. The biggest winner of the 2023 NFL Draft round 1, to me, it's between 2 teams. It's between the Houston Texans, who got a franchise quarterback, and the premier edge rusher, Will Anderson Jr. But then I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. They got Jalen Carter, the number 1 player on my big board. And then they got Nolan Smith, a top 10 player on my big board. The Eagles got 2 very good defensive players. And on top of that, I'm always a big believer if you can get chemistry. They now have Nolan Smith. They got Jalen Carter. They have Nakobe Dean, who was the captain of that team last season. And then they have Jordan Davis, 4 premier defensive players on that Georgia defense from the past 2 seasons. The Philadelphia Eagles are clear winners. But y'all are watching from the Raiders Report perspective, which I get. I like the Tyree Wilson pick. He's a good player. He's a hell of a defensive player. And to me, he might not have been the biggest need. But if you look at overall talent, best player available, Tyree was one of the top guys out there. He's got the massive size, the wingspan, elite burst, and power off the snap. If you want to be able to find another premier edge rusher outside of Will Anderson in this year's class, it's Tyree Wilson. And you pair him with Crosby, you're hoping that Crosby and Wilson next season can combine for 25 to 30 sacks. Honest to God, that's how talented he is. Does he still need some more work? Absolutely. Does he still need a lot to be able to build to be that premier guy? No doubt about it. But Chandler Jones, to me, from the athletic build that he has, reminds me a lot of Tyree Wilson. And if you can find the next Chandler Jones, you're all in. On top of that, he wanted to be a Raider. He literally told us at the NFL Combine when Chat Sports was there, he wanted to be a Raider. One of the players that Max Crosby's dad told Jeremy Chuggs and I at the event 2 weeks ago who they wanted, this guy, Tyree Wilson. So overall, my grade for this pick is a B+. And when the Raiders first made the move, I gave it a B+. After looking at the entire round one, where all the picks ended up falling, this is still a B+ grade to me. It's not the biggest need, but he's a good player. And that was important to me. I wanted the Raiders to be able to build on the defensive side of the football, and you got a good defensive player. 61 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 0 forced fumbles. I'm also a big value guy. And the way that certain corners have fallen down the board, Joey Porter Jr. is still available in round 2. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the Raiders need a corner. The Raiders need a safety. Brian Branch still available. There are some legit round 2 talents out there that the Raiders could get. There's legit because of the cornerback class sliding down because of how deep it is. The tight end class because of how deep it is sliding down. You could potentially get some legit talent at 38, at 70, at 100. And a lot of people might not love the Tyree Wilson pick. That's fine. But I want you to love the draft. So by you picking Tyree Wilson at 7, does that open up the ability for you to get a steal at 38? Does that open up the ability for you to get a steal at 70, 100? It's going to remain to be seen, but all I know is this. Jeremy Chuggs and I, we're going to be live tomorrow for our Day 2 coverage of the 2023 NFL Draft. Subscribe, turn on those notifications. We will announce the picks on here before you see them on television. That is a cold, hard fact. Chuggs and I were dropping news left and right here today. We had a hell of a time. Shout out to Zane the Savior, the MVP of our Day 1 Raiders Report stream. If you're wondering, all right, Mitch, talk to me a little bit more about Tyree Wilson and the intangibles that he brings to the silver and black. Well, this is coming in from the Athletics' Dane Brugler. Wilson plays too upright and needs to become craftier and more strategic in his pass rush, but his length, speed, and raw power are outstanding fundamental traits. His ascending tools are ripe for development, and he has Pro Bowl potential. He should be the first Texas Tech defender ever drafted in the top 20. Luckily for him and Texas Tech, he was the first ever drafted. And some people might say, buckle up. If you want to buckle up for round 2, here are the draft needs. Cornerback, defensive tackle, linebacker, offensive guard. Plenty of needs out there still for the silver and black. If Brian Branch is there at 38, I will take him every single day of the week. He's a round 1 talent. He's one of the best players still on the board. Can't believe he's still out there. I know that the Raiders need to be able to build this defense. You had 12 picks when you entered. To me, the magic number has been 8. 8 defensive players is where I would feel pretty comfortable with the Raiders going with. That's my personal opinion. If you want to interact with me on social media, you can always do it on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Cameo at MitchellRens365. If you want to interact with me and some of the other GOATs on locals, you can do it at RaidersReport.locals.com. But to round out today's round 1 draft grades, I will still give Tyree Wilson a B+ grade. He's a hell of a player. He's on the defensive side of the football. He's going to help get after the quarterback. Was it the top player on my big board? No. But good player, top 12 overall prospect. The Raiders got a good player. Take a deep breath. It's all going to be okay. Jeremy Chugs and I, we're going to see you live tomorrow for day 2, round 2, round 3, picks 38, 70, and 100 here on the Raiders Report.